Hi there. And here with me today is Nicola Cairncross of nicolacairncross.com. And Nicola is the author of The Money Gym, a book that I read many, many years ago now. And I have to credit the book with opening my eyes to money and how to save it, how to use it, how to invest it. And yeah, it's important in our importance in our lives. So today we are going to be talking about money. And once you've been made redundant, obviously money becomes a lot more important in your life. And Nicola is going to be giving us her thoughts on dealing with the issue of money at the moment. So Nicola, before we get stuck in, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, well, I reached the grand old age of 38, 37, 38, and realised that I didn't have a clue about how money worked. And while I'd always been the kind of person who bought the odd self-help book, I remember one, How to Become a Woman of Substance, which I actually did become, but in the wrong way. So, I was interested in that, and mainly because I had a best friend who was quite well off, and she always seemed to be doing things. I worked as hard as she did, but she seemed to be able to get better paid jobs. She seemed to be able to save more money. She seemed to drive a better car. She had a lot more she was a lot more clued up about how money worked. And no matter what she tried to tell me about what she was doing, she didn't really know herself, but she seemed to do things differently. And I know now that it's because she had a mother who was an accountant and who was a property investor. And her father was also, played the stock market and invested in property. So she came from an investing background and she sort of had it steeped in her bones, whereas I came from a very working class background with no entrepreneurs at all in my family. We were all just working class people. And basically I've had to learn the slow, hard, painful way how money really works. So I got to the age of 38, thought this is enough now. Because it's, a lot of people think it's about them. And it's not about you at all. It's not about whether you're brighter or harder working or whatever. It's just knowing how money itself works, how the system works, how the game's played, and then having the self-esteem to be able to think to yourself, I'm as good as anybody else and I deserve to be well off, if comfortable, well off, wealthy, whatever you want for yourself, really.
So it's a mindset thing as much as
it is. It's a mindset thing followed by a practical steps thing, and the mindset thing stops people going out and learning what the practical steps are.
The thing about being made redundant is however good you may feel that you have been with money rises to the top of the list in importance. So I know I think there's going to be two types of people, or people in two different places listening to this and watching this. They're going to be the ones that have been made redundant and perhaps they are already a little bit wobbly financially and they are really going to be under stress and panicking right now. And there are going to be those that luckily perhaps have a bit more savings behind them, or they have a redundancy payout. So in a bit more of a fortunate position to be able to think about what to do next. So let's look at the people who may be panicking right now first. Would you tell them to deal with this?
First of all, I'm going to be, for the sake of time, I'm going to be a bit blunt today. Okay. And I want everyone listening to know that whatever I say is not coming from a place of criticism or anything like that, because I have been made redundant so many times that I cannot remember them all. And that is because I am congenitally incapable of holding down a job for any longer than 18 months. And I've either put myself in a position where I've been fired, or I've strategically negotiated redundancy, because I just got very, very bored being an employee. But equally, I am one of those people who, although I technically knew the difference between that you had to save money for a rainy day, and that it was better to save than to spend on credit. I was one of those people who always used credit because I didn't want to wait. And I was one of those people who was probably still paying for a hi-fi I bought when I was 16 or 18, 20 years later, because I didn't understand about compound and compound interest. So the only people who have swum through this COVID thing are the people who saved and who somehow managed to squirrel away a bit of money every month into a bigger pot of cash, and who had 3 to 6 months money in their savings accounts, or people who learn how to invest those savings, because there's two different sides to that coin. There's saving, and then there's investing in things that grow your money. And I never even got the first bit, let alone the second bit. So anything I say today is not coming from a place of criticism. It's coming from a place of absolute love and support and understanding, because I was that person, and I have been all my life. Actually, I found it hard to not reinvest in my business, to actually put money aside and save it for a rainy day. So if you had money saved for a rainy day, brilliant. You're probably, upset about seeing your savings dwindle, but not so panicky. If the axe has fallen, as it has on me for many occasions, I've got some survival tips for you, and they're practical and they're mindset orientated. So let's imagine that you've been furloughed right now, and you've just heard that you're going to be made redundant, perhaps at the end of September or the end of August. The first thing to know is that this is not your fault. It really genuinely isn't. It's a worldwide pandemic, and nobody could have seen this coming. Although lots of people in the money world saw something coming, they didn't know exactly what it was going to be. So this has come out of the blue for most people, and you're going to go through a period of emotional turmoil. You're going to feel stupid because you didn't save money. You're going to feel angry because you haven't got anything. You're going to feel grief for your old life, and you've got to give yourself some leeway on that. And some days you're going to have bad days, and some days you're not going to feel like you're going to be able to do anything. But equally, you've got to get it through your head, the thing that I finally realized at the age of 37 or 38, which is nobody cares. Nobody else cares what happens to you in your life. Perhaps your mum might care, or your husband, or whatever, but it is Gary Vaynerchuk saying, one of my mentors, and he says nobody cares and nobody is coming to save you. And that's finally what I realized at the age of 37. And the wonderful thing is, once you can get to that point of realizing that it's up to you and perhaps your partner, if you're lucky enough to have one, then you take complete responsibility for everything that happens to you. And it's actually a very freeing place. It's actually a very emotionally resilient place. It stops you waiting and hoping for a miracle that isn't coming. And so that I call it the Prince Charming syndrome, and I nearly wrote a whole book about it because it's so prevalent. We're brought up to believe that the government's going to look after us, or the health service is going to look after us, or that we're entitled to things that we're not entitled to. And if you start from a place of not feeling entitled to anything, then it gets you off your arse and taking action, which is what you need to do right now. So the first thing I would say is you've got to get control of every single penny now. I would cancel everything. I would cancel all your direct debits, cancel all your standing orders, change your cards. So if you've got credit cards and debit cards, I would ring them up and say you've lost them and get them to send you replacements, because that will cancel anything that you've been paying for or subscribing to online. I actually do this as a matter of housekeeping, because I work online a lot, and I end up subscribing to all sorts of things. And those £10 a pop, or £7.99, or £6.99, or £14.99, they can really mount up. And then what will happen? Yeah, they really can mount up. And what you don't want to be doing is going, and this has happened to me before, is thinking I've got 100 quid for food for the rest of the week, and then £79.99 comes out of your bank account when you least expect it, for some insurance payment that you've totally forgotten about. So I would absolutely cancel everything. And then I don't have any direct debits or standing orders that come out of my bank account ever. If anyone tries to make me pay anything by standing order and direct debit, I just say, no, I'm sorry, I don't do that. I will pay on time, but I will pay by bank transfer. So get control of your money so that you never get to the checkout of Sainsbury's and have to leave all your food for the weekend on the conveyor belt, which has happened to me many times, or not knowing if you're going to be able, the card's going to go through. It's just horrendous. So what you need to do now is you need to shift around your priorities. You need to make sure that you've got money for food, money for petrol, money for bills, because they can cut your electricity off. You might need petrol to get somewhere in a hurry, and you definitely need food, because without that you're not going to function. And if you've got a family, even more so. Medicine, that's something to think about as well. So these are your top priorities. Even before rent and mortgage, your priorities are your food, petrol, medicine and bills. Because the rent and the mortgage can always be negotiated. If you've got rent, you know, there's another 4 weeks of people who are in many months arrears. Not, you know, they're not, even though they're not being kicked out right now. So you've got wiggle room on the rent and the mortgage, and you need to think about that straight away. You know, what can we do about that? If it's a mortgage, can you go and ask for a payment holiday? And you mustn't be embarrassed to do it. People are so proud and so fearful of anyone knowing that they're in trouble. They struggle on and they try and keep up appearances and try and keep everything going. I remember one time when, well, it was 2009, 2010, my partner had left and moved out into a flat of their own, and I was in a 5-bedroom house. It was beautiful and I loved it. And I was earning well, so I kept it instead of moving us all into a tinier house. I could have saved, you know, probably about £500 a month when I had money by just moving into a smaller place. And I didn't do it because I was trying to just keep everything as normal as possible. It's human nature to live in denial, and you've got to come straight out of denial into reality and think, you know, is there any way I can bring, you know, any of my expenses down? Cancel the gym membership. They're going to cut up rough. They really are, because they've got very aggressive people who chase. Go to your credit card companies and say, I can't afford to pay you for 3 months. Buy yourself 3 months as a minimum. They will all squeal like the squealy pigs that they are, but you've got to get control of your money and make sure that nothing goes out that doesn't have to. Forget about your credit rating. If you're not going to get a job straight away, then your credit rating is going to go up the swanny anyway. And I have lived for, let me think how long it is now. I have lived since 2006 with a terrible credit rating. It's just repairing itself now, but I haven't needed, unless you're going to be borrowing money or getting a mortgage, you don't need a credit rating. That's essentially, you're not going to be borrowing any more money for a while. So let it go. Stop worrying about it. Now you're in 2 places now. So you've either got no money or you've got someone you need to protect it. If you've got no money at all, get straight onto Universal Credit and see what they can do to help you. Because again, don't be embarrassed or ashamed. You're not going to have to even go to the office now. You can just do it all online, and you don't have to walk down to the job centre, as it's called, and go through the interview. They will just give you some money. It's not much, but it might help. And the other thing that Universal Credit do is they offer you a loan. So if you sign up and they say it's going to be about 5 weeks to get any money at all, if you're entitled to something towards your rent, for example, then you can apply for a loan, interest-free loan, which is payable back over the next year. So they'll give you some money very quickly, and you can apply for that online as soon as you've been accepted on the computer. When the computer says yes, you can ask for the loan and the computer will say yes. And then you can pay that back over the next year, or just get you some money to keep you going until the whole thing kicks in. And ditto, if you've been self-employed, you can go to Universal Credit and say, I was self-employed, I'm now looking for work because my self-employed income's dried up. And they'll put you on the variation of the thing where you can actually declare your income every month and declare any outgoings from your business, and they will then pay you up to what they're going to pay you based on, they'll deduct any profit you've made from your business, which presumably you're not making anything at the moment. So there's a self-employed version as well. I'm going to give everyone a resource at the end of this, and I hope you're going to like it. And it's a free copy of my book, The Money Gym, that Paul has referred to earlier, which I rewrote after the property crash. So it's pretty up to date on all of that stuff, property and everything. Things have moved on dramatically. There are other things to invest in. There are easier ways to invest in shares. Not that I would recommend that at the moment. And essentially it gives you everything you need to know. So if you want to start a business, I'll give you my top 10 business books that I think are absolutely essential to read if you're going into business. If you want to get another job, I've found a fantastic resource for people about how they can really make themselves stand out in the crowd for jobs. And I'm going to put that into the missing chapter that I'm going to give you all at the end of this. You've got to look after yourself first, then you've got to look after your family. And then if you've got some energy left, then start to think about what you can do to change things. But you can only work from a place of security yourself. And I feel that very strongly. You've got to get a grip of your emotions and a grip of your how you think. And this was the hardest thing for me. And I only learned the lesson really when I lost my partner, Steve, suddenly in 2016. And it was the hardest thing. I've never lost anyone close to me like that. I don't know if you have, Paula, but it happened so suddenly. It's a bit like a childbirth, you know, you don't know how bad it is till you've been through it. And grief is the same. I just didn't know how bad it is until you've been through it. And because my mum, you know, I haven't seen my mum for 20 odd years, and my dad died when I was 7. So, you know, I haven't really experienced real grief. And it was so difficult, and just functioning day to day was so difficult. And the only thing that helped was I happened to have a friend called Andy Shaw, who was a fantastic property investor. He had, you know, so many properties, it was unreal. And he'd been through tough times when the market crashed in 2009, 2010, and we became even closer friends. And I said to him one day, you should write a book about how you think, because he thinks very differently to most people. And he started to write this book, and it was honestly and truly the thing that kept me sane and alive when I went through my period of grief. And it's called Creating a Bug-Free Mind and Using a Bug-Free Mind. And it's helped people in 150 countries around the world. It's helped people get over PTSD. It's helped people get over depression, because he's so clear in the way he thinks, and he helps you to get a grip of how you think. And I think this is going to be absolutely bloody vital for the next few months and years for most people, because everything that's always tripped me up has been my emotions and my self-esteem. And if you can get a grip of your emotions and get a firm grip and bolster your self-esteem, then you're going to be able to take better action, whether it's getting a new job or starting a little business or becoming a consultant or whatever. Can you make a big change in your life? Can you think about moving? If your work can go online, can you think about doing that? You know, the most unlikely people I know have changed their business models completely and changed their work to working. I mean, city centres are deserted, so we can all work online. I've been banging on about it, Paul, as long as Paul has known me. I've done my whole business online, so I can live wherever I want to. And sometimes I've been poorer for it, but at least I've had the freedom to live where I need to. So when Steve died, I was able to just pack up and go to Greece for a while, because I just couldn't cope with being around everything that reminded me of our life here. And it helped enormously. And I was able to carry on my business from Greece as if, you know, as long as I got an internet connection. So can you change what you do to become more mobile? Can you change what you do to become self-employed? Can you change what you do to become a consultant rather than relying on just one job, just one source of income? You know, when 2009 came, I had about 100 people paying me something like £25 a month, and that was a really nice little bedrock. So even though I went bust and actually ended up being made bankrupt by the tax office, I still had that flow of income going on. So even when you go bust, even when you're made redundant, if you've got other streams of income, those streams of income don't stop. Nobody says, no, you can't have any more of that money you're earning. It's just structured in a different way. I don't even know if I'm making sense now. So you must tell me if I'm burbling in too obscurely. But
no, it all makes. I mean, one of the things is even if you go back and you get a job, you can still have those streams of income, can't you?
Absolutely, yeah. A side hustle, it's called nowadays. And, you know, I know so many people who've got little shops on Etsy, and, you know, they make greetings cards, or they make felt animals, or they make, there's one guy in Greece I know who makes fabulous fish things to put on your wall out of scrap metal. But they're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. So having a side hustle is often what people do when they want to move away from having a job eventually. But now I would say it's absolutely essential. Yeah. Even if you do a cleaning job, you know, you go out on Saturdays, Sunday mornings and clean for other people. That's a side hustle. And it really just, A, can be a lifeline financially. B, is often cash in hand, which is always a good thing. and C is something that you could build up into, say, a local cleaning business. You know, you could start off with it just being a side hustle, but it could become a business for you. And I think that's what we've all got to think about. You know, in the olden days, before the Industrial Revolution, we were all self-employed. You know, everybody, we either made pots, or we made clothes, or we thatched roofs, or we raised pigs, or, you know, or made bread, or any, you know, anything. We were all self-employed, and nobody relied on a job, as it were. So that's what we've got to get back to. And the other thing I'd like to just say in this section is two things, really. Do you bring massive value? That's the thing that you've got to think about. When I'm applying for, and I'm going to give you a great resource that will make you think more about this if you are going to be job hunting again. Do you bring massive value? Are you going to be the person who stands out from the crowd at the interview, or even at the CV stage? I'll give you a little story. When I was when I'd had this epiphany about it was all down to me and nobody was coming to save me, and even though I'd just got married and had a baby on the way, I had to go out and look for a job because I could type, and that was a massive skill compared. You know, my husband couldn't type, and he was just made redundant for the 3rd time that year. And so I went out looking for a job as a secretary because I figured it'd be easy and quick to get a job as a secretary, even though it wouldn't pay very much. And I went for lots of interviews, and I remember one dreadful interview along, I can't remember even what motorway it was. It was some grey motorway out of London. It was an aggregates company, so there were big piles of grey stone everywhere, and there was cement, and there was sand, and I went into the office, and I did the interview, and I knew I'd give good interview because I'm energetic. And it knocks them sideways, and they sort of think, yeah, she's going to work really hard for us. And then I walked out of there, and I was driving back along this motorway back into London where we lived, and I had to stop the car and cry because I thought, I cannot possibly go and work there. I can't do it. It's going to be so grim. And so I started applying for more interesting jobs, for anything at all, anything that was more interesting than that. And I came across a fantastic job which was a personal assistant to an arts entrepreneur. And I went for the interview, and I thought, oh my God, it was this fantastic Gothic mansion in Hampstead. And he was like Doctor Who. He just honestly had the long coat and the long scarf and long hair. And he was a bit older, and he was just an amazing entrepreneur. And I just absolutely not fell in love with him, but I fell in love with the idea of working for him. So he was going to be second interviewing about 2 weeks' time from the interview I went to. And I knew that I was going to be on holiday in Worthing because we had no money. So we were going down to stay with my sister. And I thought, what can I do to really make myself stand out from the crowd on this one? So I went round. He had 5 or 6 buildings in London. Alfie's Antiques, Gray's Antiques. There was somewhere, the Canalot Production Studios in northwest London. And he basically bought up old buildings and turned them into creative spaces for entrepreneurs or art dealers or antique dealers or painters or whatever. He had the Big Peg in Birmingham. He had a Gothic castle in Scotland. And I went round to as many of his buildings as I possibly could get into in the next week, and just walked around making notes about my impressions of, you know, what I thought of the cafe, what I thought of the toilets, how I was treated by the reception staff, what I thought each building's strengths were, what I thought could be improved. And I put it all into a report for him, and I found out where he was, and he was at his castle in Scotland while I was on my holiday in Worthing. And I faxed it to him because we didn't have there was hardly any internet in those days. And I faxed it to him, and I said, you know, I really, really want this job. I just wanted that job so badly. And anyway, I actually came back from Worthing on the day that second interviews were being held, because I thought he would have written to me to give me a second interview. And he didn't know I was on holiday, so I had to come back to London to see if I had a letter. And I walked into the house, and I'll never forget how I felt. There was no letter.
Yeah.
And I thought, I cannot believe it. I'm going to have to ring him. I blooming hate the telephone, as you probably remember, Paula. I could do appointments, but I can't ring anyone spontaneously. And so I rang him, and I said, hi, Benny, it's Nicola Cairncross here. Oh, Nicola, I'm so glad you've called. I said, well, I was just ringing because I know you're doing second interviews today, and my letter doesn't appear to have arrived. And he laughed his head off and he said, there's no letter, Nicola. No, I haven't sent you a letter to come for a second interview. And I said, oh, Benny, I'm absolutely gutted. I thought we got on brilliantly and I really, really love your buildings. He said, no. He said, hang on. He said, there's no letter because I think you'd make an absolutely terrible personal assistant for me. He said, we would fight all the time about what I wanted you to do. He said, but what I do want is for you to come and join me on Monday. I'll find a job for you. We'll create a role. In fact, you can title yourself. Yeah. And I'll give you the job of his personal assistant was 16 grand a year. And he said, I'll start you on 20 grand and then we'll see where we go from there. And I thought, wow, you know, he said, I can't let you go. You know, you've got so much energy and you've put yourself out so much more. Mm. So that's what I'm trying to get over to the people listening and watching this. When you apply for a job, what can you do, even if it's doing a bit of research about the company or a bit of research about the person concerned, which is so easy to do now on the internet. You know, research the company, research the person, find out what football team they like, you know, send them something about their favourite player, I don't know, send them a book, you know, just really try and figure out what you can do to stand out from the crowd. And the resource I'm going to give you is all about how to make your CV stand out from the crowd and you stand out on LinkedIn and things like that. So I hope the story is how you can bring extra value and stand out. And that's really important. And finally, on this section, I just wanted to talk about a truism that I knew for years and totally ignored, which is the trick to money is having some. And even if you're absolutely skint as what's-its and you honestly don't feel you've got any way to save at all because you've got nothing, I'm a walking example of how things change when you start to take action. And the reason people start telling you to save is because it makes you feel different when you've got some money. Even if that's 20 quid or 50 quid or 100 quid that you didn't have last week, last month, whatever. It's not about the amount of money you're saving. It's about the fact that you're paying yourself first and you're valuing yourself first and you're valuing yourself over Sainsbury's and over, you know, Admiral car insurance or whatever. You know, you're putting yourself first before all those other people who are lining up to take your money. And it does something to your head. There's I've got a fantastic podcast. It's only 21 episodes, I think, of the Money Gym podcast. And if you go and find that at themoneygym.com and listen to Daniel Priestley, we all know Daniel, don't we? He's gone on to do some amazing things. And he gave me 2 money tips that were so brilliant, I had to include both of them. He's the only person I included 2 tips from. And the Money Gym podcast is all about money tips from people I know that have been personally successful and dragged themselves up by their bootstraps. And Daniel is one of them. And he gave me 2 great tips. So go and find that, because the trick to money is having some, and you have to find some for yourself somewhere before anybody else lines up to take it off you. And finally, Paula, any questions from that bit, Paula, or shall I plough straight on?
No, I just remember the whole idea of paying yourself first.
Yeah, it is, and it's a self-esteem.
But I hadn't been doing it. Yeah,
it's a self-esteem thing, but it's also it's a practical thing, because then when something comes along that you need to pay for that you weren't expecting, even if you've only got part of the money that you don't have to borrow. That's the goal, is to try and stop borrowing and try and get out of debt. But I realise that's an impossible goal for lots of people. But the Money Gym book covers all that. You know, it covers all the debt. It covers all the practical stuff. It covers how to make a cash flow forecast so that you're not caught short at Sainsbury's checkout. You know, and I think the more you teach, now I'm going to get a bit woo-woo here. I'm not really a very woo-woo person, but I have learned over the years that the more you show the universe or physics or quantum physics or whatever, the more you show the universe that you're ready to look after money, the more money you'll start to be able to attract and then keep. And by not saving even a little bit, you're essentially saying to the universe, I'm not going to look after my money. Mm. And I think of it, you know, I read somewhere that if you treat money like a lover, then you're much more likely to hang on to them. And that's so true, because if you treat a lover as badly as you treat your money,
Yeah.
they wouldn't stick around, would they?
No.
They wouldn't be attracted to you in the first place, and they wouldn't stick around. And that's a really good expression, I think, to try and remember, what to do. So section 3, which can be week 3 of just being made redundant, or month 3, depending on how fast you work. I'll start with a little reminder. What's a little reminder? This is not your fault. You've got to hang on to your self-esteem. Nobody's coming to save you, but it's not your fault. Okay, so now you need to evaluate your strengths and skills. This is if you want to go on to change your career or to start a small business, perhaps. There's a really fantastic test online. Have you ever done it, Paul? It's called the Wealth Dynamics Test.
Yes, I have, years ago.
Yeah. Roger Hamilton.
Yes.
Look for it online. It's a Wealth Dynamics Test. I think it's about $70 to do it online, but it's really, really worth it. And it tells you your fastest route to the money based on your personality. So I'm a creator star with a bit of mechanic. So I like to create new things all the time. I like to create new programs. I like to write new books. I like to, because of the star bit of my personality, I can do this sort of thing easily. I can stand in front of 1,000 people and talk easily, although I'm a bit of an introvert most of the time. I like to know how things work. So that's the mechanic bit of me. So I'm good at software. I can look at a bit of software and think. Yeah. And then you've got your supporters around the side who are connectors. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you were one of those, Paula, because your PR background and being able to connect people and keep relationships going and things like that. Then you come around to the other side of the scale where your introverts live, where your traders are, the people who like to buy low and sell high. And I'm trying to make myself into more of a trader. And then you've got your Lord accumulators, who are the people who like to accumulate assets. They like to own property. They like to own business. And Steve, my partner, was one of those. He was always in the background, always trying to, make things work. So he was a Lord accumulator mechanic. Yeah. So he liked to own assets, didn't like to be on stage. So if you know about yourself, the Wealth Dynamics Test takes that a step further. It's not just a personality test. It'll take it a step further and it'll show you your fastest route to the money. Mm. And it'll also show you where you're not good with money. Creator stars, typically in television and film and writers, terrible with money, absolutely awful. Whereas Lord accumulators never want to be on stage, never want to be in front of anything, and always squirreling away the assets down the other side. So it'll give you some really good pointers about where you could start to naturally and easily and happily make money in the way that suits your personality best. Highly recommended that. What are people going to need lots of going forward? There's been some real business surprise successes through this. 90% of the stock market have crashed, but the ones that are going up are eBay, because it lets people sell things, Etsy, because it lets people sell their little creations, Zoom, obviously massive success. What else? Stripe, which enables people to take online payments. eBay, sorry, not eBay, what am I talking about? PayPal. All of these companies facilitate work, because they own, that's the ticker for Slack. Slack helps people work in teams remotely. So look at all the businesses that are helping people to either make money, save money, or work remotely, and think to yourself, does anything I do fit into that marketplace? Could I change what I do? Are you having thoughts there? Yeah. Because we know nobody's going back to working in central London. Nobody's going back to working. I saw some pictures of San Francisco yesterday, and restaurants are doing surprisingly well now they've opened. The best restaurants who kept going through the pandemic were the ones who swapped immediately into home delivery. Yeah. And we're talking about really expensive restaurants sometimes. They would so people have got money. Don't imagine that everyone's, this is another thing I've learned over the years, don't imagine that everyone's as skint as you are. You don't know what people have got squirreled away. You don't know what inheritances they've got. I mean, I've got a client who came to me and I thought, they were a poor fashion designer, and it turned out they had quite a hefty inheritance they were looking to place. So as well as wanting marketing advice, they wanted financial advice about how to best use the inheritance, best invest it, you know, how to keep it safe through the next few years. So don't imagine everyone's as skint as you are. They're for a good service, well placed, adding lots of value, standing out from the crowd. There will always be a customer base, and they will always be willing to pay you what the value you're bringing to them. And then if you wanted to start a new business, you've got to think, what are people going to want lots of? And then are you going to offer your products and services, or are you going to offer other people's products and services? There is a massive shortage of salespeople for online businesses. People like to buy from people they know, like, and trust. And there will always be a need for people who are willing to talk to people on the phone instead of expecting people to press a button on a website. So salespeople could pivot quite well onto working for online businesses and being the customer services end of things. And there are lots of people out there who offer affiliate commission. And this is something not many people know about, but if you go to Amazon, for example, through a special link, you can earn a tiny bit of commission. And sometimes they'll go for a book and end up buying an exercise bike or something. Yeah. So, you know, there can be commission earned there. But there are lots of other people who will pay 20% commission, 25%, 30%, even 50% commission. And if you're representing a company that does a really good service and it's an ongoing service, so say it's something people pay for monthly, you can earn recurring billing, you can earn recurring commission. And in the missing chapter that I'm going to give you, I'll put links to the 2 or 3 biggest places where you can go and find the kind of products and services that you can sell and earn a commission. You'd be amazed. So it's either your products and services or it's other people's products and services. And then once you've decided that, you're either going to become a business online perhaps, or a little local services business, or you're going to become someone who sells other people's products and services and earns a commission. So like a digital salesperson, yeah. But only do it for things you know, like, and trust. You've got to believe in the products you're recommending. Otherwise you will come across as sleazy and insincere, and people won't buy from you. So that's really important. Do you need to move? Because moving might be a good thing. You know, if you've been thinking of moving or retiring, and I'm not just talking about to the country, if you go and live in Greece right now, they're offering people a 7% tax bracket if you become a Greek citizen, and you can rent a 2-bedroom house in Greece for about 250, 300 euros a month. I paid I think it was 250, 300 euros a month for a beautiful little 2-bedroom cottage. And I paid another 300 euros a month to rent a car, which I didn't have any of the maintenance or upkeep or worries about. And then I had to pay 50 euros a month for my high-speed broadband. So my outgoings were something like half what they were in the UK. So if you've always fancied living abroad, now might be a great time to try it. You can go to any country and rent a property, and that will give you residency rights if you're renting on a tenancy agreement, a proper tenancy agreement. Or you could just go for 3 months and see if you like it. Just either put people in your house here, or lots of people in Greece were renting out their homes here, and they were using the money from that to cover their rent and bills and food and booze, yeah. in Greece, because it's such a difference in the standard of living. Time to think about that. Could anyone move in with you? Could you move in with your parents? Could you do what I've done, which is move back in with my kids, much to their delight? They weren't expecting that one, I tell you. So is there anyone you can get to move in with you? Could you share your house? It's not only good fun. I mean, it takes a bit of management, obviously, but it really cuts the old outgoings down dramatically, that's for sure. I mean, I'm paying something like £400 a month here for a lovely 3-bedroom flat overlooking the river with all my bills thrown in. So, you know, when I was paying, what was I paying, about £1,600 a month to have my own 2-bedroom cottage around the corner? Yeah. Madness, absolute madness. If you can reduce your own anxiety levels by thinking what's the worst that can happen, and then putting something in place to cope with that, then you're going to be in a much better mental position to deal with the strain of trying to look for a new job or start a business. Yeah. Deal with the things that make you anxious. I would really recommend that. And that's pretty much everything I've written down here that I wanted to share today. And anything that I've talked about that you're not quite sure about, I will include in this missing chapter for the Money Gym. And I'm going to give away a copy of the book and also the audio, which you can get on Audible, of course, but you have to pay for it. So I'm going to give you a copy of that. If you prefer to read, you can read. If you want to listen, you can listen. And if you want the paperback, you have to order it from Amazon.
Yeah, now that's a really, really good resource. Thank you, Nicola.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'll just throw everything I've, all the links to everything I've talked about in the missing chapter, and people can just download it for free.
Excellent. Well, I mean, there's been tons there. There's stuff for everybody.
I hope so. I tried to make it a mix of practical and psychological.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned the mindset thing, because that is really important. And it is so easy to go into denial and pretend things aren't happening.
Yeah. And I've been there many times, and you can get through it. The sun doesn't stop coming up the next day. Even on the worst days that terrible things happen, you get through it, and you just have to get through each day, one day at a time, really.
Yeah.
And remember, the trick to money is having some.
Thank you, Nicola.